I found him sitting beneath an overpass, wrapped in a jacket that wasn't his, staring at the traffic like he was waiting for a life that had already driven past. I hadn't said his name in years, yet the moment our eyes met, it felt like the world remembered something I tried hard to forget. I should have walked away, but the truth he whispered made my knees buckle. We hadn't spoken since the night our lives split apart, a night I learned how silence can bruise deeper than words. I rebuilt myself slowly. A small apartment, steady work, a life without the chaos he used to bring. Then one cold evening, on my way home from a late shift, I saw a man curled against a concrete pillar, and the tilt of his shoulders made something inside me stop. When he lifted his face, shadows falling away, I realized the past wasn't finished with me.
Not yet.
The street was quiet in that way only late evenings can be, the kind of quiet that hangs low, heavy, like the world is holding its breath. The underpass ahead of me glowed with a tired yellow light, its edges softened by the mist rolling in from somewhere unseen. I was halfway across when a shape pulled at the corner of my eye. A figure hunched against a concrete pillar, folded into himself. I wouldn't have stopped. I should have kept walking. But something in the way he held his shoulders, a familiar curve, a remembered weight, made my feet slow. I took another step, then another, feeling the air grow colder as I got closer. The smell of rain clung to the night, that metallic heaviness that makes everything feel suspended. He didn't look up. Not until I was close enough to see his shoes, scuffed, worn thin, the stitching nearly undone. When he finally lifted his head, the streetlight shifted just enough for me to see what time had done to him. He looked thinner, older. The spark in his eyes, the one that once softened entire summers, was gone, replaced by something brittle and gray. He said my name like he wasn't sure it still belonged to me. Quiet, careful, as if the sound itself might crumble. The wind tugged at my coat, brushing strands of hair across my face, but I didn't move them. I just stared. At him. At what was left of him. At what I never thought I'd see. I didn't think I'd ever see you again, he whispered. His voice scraped like gravel dragged across pavement. I didn't sit beside him, not yet. I hovered there awkwardly, fingers tightening around the strap of my bag. The kind of hesitation that's born from old wounds and unfinished sentences. What happened to you? The words slipped out before I could soften them. He shook his head slowly, the motion small and tired. I don't know where to start. His hands tugged absently at the frayed hem of his jacket. I'm just tired. The silence between us settled like dust, fine, fragile, impossible to brush away without disturbing everything beneath it. I kept looking at him, at the way his fingers trembled, at the hollow beneath his cheekbones. At the boy I once loved hiding somewhere inside the man sitting on cold concrete. Why didn't you call me? I asked quietly. He exhaled, long and heavy, like the question carried more weight than he could hold. I didn't want you to see me like this. The honesty in his voice cracked something open in my chest. I sat down then, the concrete cold through my coat but grounding. He blinked, surprised, as though he didn't expect anyone to bridge the distance between him and the world anymore. I got lost, he said after a while. Piece by piece. One mistake, then another, and suddenly there wasn't anything left to come home to. Cars thundered overhead, the sound rolling through the underpass like a distant storm. Every time one passed, his shoulders twitched, just slightly. He kept his eyes low, on the ground, on nothing. I kept thinking things would get better, he murmured. That I'd catch a break. That I'd be okay. But one day I woke up and I wasn't. He pulled one knee closer, folding his arms around it like he needed something solid to hold on to. I watched the way he swallowed hard, trying to push words through a throat that had swallowed too much silence. There was no one left to call, he said. No one I hadn't disappointed. The wind moved between us again, soft enough to feel like a hand brushing past. I looked at him, really looked, and felt memories flickering around the edges of who he'd become. The boy who once made me laugh until my stomach hurt. The boy who held dreams like they were lanterns that could light any dark. How do you walk away from someone who looks like they've already been left too many times? The thought echoed inside me, stronger than anything I could say out loud.
So I didn't speak.
I just sat there, letting the moment breathe, letting him exist in a space where he wasn't unseen. The night settled around us. Leaves skittered across the curb, blown forward by a wind that didn't seem to know where it was going either. He kept his gaze fixed on the cracked concrete. I kept mine on him, piecing together fragments of a person who used to feel like home. After a long stretch of quiet, I whispered, "How did you end up here?" He inhaled, a shaky breath, the kind people take right before opening a part of themselves they're scared to revisit. "That," he said softly, "is a longer story than you think." And sitting there beside him, I felt the weight of a chapter beginning, one I never planned to read, and one he never wanted to write. The night had settled into that strange stillness that only highways know, wide, echoing, stretched thin between the sound of passing cars. Their headlights swept across the underpass, in long, wandering arcs, each beam carving him out of the shadows for just a moment before letting him fade back in. I could see the outline of his shoulders trembling long before I reached him, though he tried to hide it by folding his arms tight across his chest. When he lifted his head, his eyes didn't meet mine right away. They drifted past me, toward the road, toward anything that wasn't the person he once promised to never hurt. And still, when he asked, "Do you have a moment?" Quiet, fragile, as if the question itself might shatter between us, something in me kept me from saying no. I lowered myself onto the cold concrete beside him, feeling the chill seep through my coat and into my bones. The air carried the smell of damp asphalt and the faint sweetness of fallen leaves caught somewhere in the dark. A truck roared by, its lights catching the tremor in his hands, small, rhythmic, impossible to miss now that I was so close. We didn't speak at first. He didn't look at me. I didn't reach for him. The silence settled around us like a blanket that had been left out in the cold, heavy, stiff, a little uncomfortable. Finally, he exhaled, and the sound barely made it past his lips. "I'm sorry," he whispered. The apology hovered between us, thin as smoke. Too soft. Too easy. Too late. For what? I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted the answer. "For everything," he said, his voice catching in the middle, as if the word itself scraped against old wounds. "For the way things ended. For disappearing. For letting myself become this." A car's headlights washed over us again, drawing the faint shine of tears in his eyes. He blinked them away quickly, looking down at his hands like they were someone else's. "You didn't just disappear," I said quietly. "You walked out like you were going to come right back. And then you didn't." His jaw tightened just a little. The smallest flinch. The kind you notice only when you've known someone so intimately that even their silence has a shape. "I know," he murmured. "I know I did." The wind found its way beneath the underpass, carrying with it the low hum of the world above us. I watched him stare at the ground as if he expected answers to rise out of the cracks in the concrete. "I wasn't running from you," he finally said. "I need you to know that." "Then what were you running from?" His breath faltered. "Myself, I guess." I didn't respond. I just watched the way he pressed his palms flat against the cold ground, almost as if grounding himself. He looked smaller like that, folded in, like a boy waiting for someone to tell him it was safe to speak. "I messed up," he continued, voice almost too soft for the night to carry. "I kept telling myself I had time to fix things, that I could figure it out and come back to you with something better to offer. But the longer I waited, the less I had left." A siren wailed somewhere in the distance. The echo reached us in a faint, stretched tone, lonely, almost mournful. "You could have told me," I whispered. "I didn't want you to see me falling apart." "You think I didn't notice?" I asked. "I could feel it. Every day. Like you were slipping through a crack I couldn't reach." He swallowed hard, his throat working around the words he couldn't seem to say. "I thought I was protecting you. But maybe I was just making myself feel better by pretending that." His voice broke at the end, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a small fracture. A hairline crack that made my chest tighten. "I kept trying to come back," he said. "Every time I got close, something inside me froze. Like I wasn't allowed." Like I didn't deserve to sit across from you again. A long pause followed. Cars passed in a steady rhythm, like the world refused to slow for either of us. When he finally looked at me, his eyes held a fear I had never seen there before, raw, unmasked, careful. The truth is, I don't know how to start explaining, he said. Try, I whispered. He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering whatever strength he had left. I lost everything, he said. And before I knew how to ask for help, I lost myself too. His words hit the air like something old and heavy. Something he'd been carrying far too long. I didn't want you to see me this way, he added. Not you. Anyone else, maybe. But not you. The smallest ache bloomed in my chest, slow, deliberate, the kind that comes from recognizing a pain you'd almost stopped expecting to feel. I didn't need you to be perfect, I said. I just needed you to be honest. He nodded, slow and shaking. I know. He wiped his face with the sleeve of his jacket, pretending it was nothing. Pretending he hadn't just opened a door he'd kept locked for years. I'm sorry, he whispered again, barely there. We sat in silence after that, two silhouettes drawn thin against the concrete, held together only by memory and the fragile thread of something he still hadn't said. The night grew colder, the wind stronger, but neither of us moved. He kept circling around his truth like it was a flame he wasn't sure wouldn't burn him. And I sat beside him, knowing the moment he finally stepped into it, everything between us would change. I looked at him, at the tired shape of him, at the way his shoulders rose and fell like every breath was a negotiation. What is it you're trying so hard not to say? I asked softly. He didn't answer. Not yet. But the look in his eyes told me the truth. Whatever was coming next, it was going to hurt. The wind had softened by the time he finally exhaled, like the night itself was holding its breath for him. We sat under the bridge, with the hum of passing traffic above us, each pair of headlights stretching our shadows long across the concrete before they slipped away again. He rubbed his palms together, slow and absent, like a man trying to warm hands that had been cold for far too long. When he finally spoke, the words didn't come in a steady stream. They stumbled out, hesitated, caught on the edge of something raw. I should have told you sooner, he murmured. I just didn't know where to start. I didn't move. I didn't push. The quiet around us felt like a thin shell. One sharp breath, and it could crack. I lost my job, he said. That was the beginning of it. His voice wavered, dipping low as if the confession itself weighed more than he could hold. A car rushed by overhead, its tires whispering across the highway, and for a moment that sound filled the space where his courage faltered. I thought it was temporary, he continued. A few weeks, a month at most. I kept telling myself it wasn't that big of a deal. He laughed once, short, humorless. It was a big deal. The truth hung in the cold air between us. There was no dramatic collapse in his voice, no tremor that begged for pity. Just a slow unraveling. A man replaying the steps he took into his own darkness. Then the rent fell behind. I had to give up the apartment. He paused, staring at a cracked line in the pavement like he expected it to answer him. I sold what I could, let go of things I thought I'd always have.
A bed.
A sofa. My books. He swallowed hard. My things went before I did. The headlights from another passing car washed across his face, revealing the exhaustion carved into the corners of his eyes. I'd never noticed it before, not like this. The lines weren't the ones time makes. They were the kind that come from wanting to scream, but choosing silence instead. I crashed with a friend for a while, he said. You remember Jake? I nodded. He let me stay until he couldn't anymore. He had his own struggles. And he rubbed the back of his neck, shame settling over him like dust. I didn't tell you. Not once. The night dipped quieter, the wind shifting just slightly. He didn't look at me. He kept his gaze fixed on the road as if the next car's lights might erase what he'd just said. People disappear when you're no longer useful to them, he whispered. When you don't have anything to offer. He let the sentence linger there, thin and trembling. I had no idea what to say. The truth of his words scraped against something deep inside me. After a while, he said, Even I didn't want to look at myself anymore. His fingers twitched, small, restless. He kept glancing in my direction, then away again, like a man standing at the edge of a deeper story he wasn't sure he should touch. I kept thinking I'd get back on my feet, he continued. That I'd call you once I had something decent to show. A place. A plan. Something that didn't look like failure. The wind rustled an empty chip bag near our feet, dragging it a few inches across the pavement before letting it rest again. But the weeks didn't get better, he said. Then months. One setback after another. And somewhere in the middle of all that, I stopped believing I could fix anything. He took a long, shaky breath. You remember how you used to say I disappeared when things got too much? I guess you were right. I disappeared even for myself. A train horn echoed faintly in the distance, long and low, like a memory trying to find its way home. I studied him quietly. The hunched shoulders, the trembling hands, the way he kept picking at a loose thread on his sleeve like he needed something, anything, to anchor himself. You could have reached out, I said softly. It wasn't an accusation. It was grief in the shape of a sentence. I know, he whispered. That's the part one can't forgive myself for. He finally looked at me. Not a glance, really looked. And in that moment, his eyes held something I hadn't expected.
Fear.
Not of me, not of judgment, but of the truth he was circling around, carefully, painfully, like a wound he wasn't sure could be touched without bleeding. There's more, he murmured. His voice lowered to almost nothing. There's something else I haven't told you. A cold breeze swept around us then, carrying the smell of distant rain. It brushed against my face, made me shiver. Or maybe it was his tone, soft, trembling, that sent the chill through me. What is it? I asked. He blinked long and slow, the kind of blink someone uses to hold back tears. He opened his mouth to speak, closed it again, ran a hand through his hair, stared at the ground. Every time I tried to call you, he said, I hung up before the first ring.
Why?
He drew in a breath that sounded like it hurt. Because I didn't want you to see me the way I became. Another car passed, its headlights slicing across us. For an instant his face was fully lit, and I saw it then. The exhaustion.
The shame.
And something deeper. Something he hadn't named yet. But that isn't the whole truth, he whispered. My heartbeat tightened. He looked away again, as if the next words needed darkness to survive. I didn't just lose everything, he said. I lost someone. And I've been carrying that alone. The night held still around us. Even the wind seemed to pause. He glanced at me again, and this time the fear in his eyes wasn't hiding. It was pleading, as if whatever he was about to say next would change everything that came before. And maybe it would. The street lamps flickered as if they were listening, their yellow light trembling across the wet pavement. We sat side by side on the low concrete ledge beneath the overpass, the world above us rushing forward while we stayed suspended in a moment neither of us could run from. He kept his hands clasped together like a child afraid to lose something important between his fingers. And when he finally drew in a breath, it sounded like the beginning of a confession he'd been rehearsing in the dark for years. He stared straight ahead, as if the night itself was easier to face than me. It started the night we broke up, he said quietly. It wasn't supposed to go like that. The words drifted into the air, thin and brittle, the kind that crack if you touch them too quickly. A car passed above us, the headlights spilling through the gaps in the bridge, cutting a strip of white across his face. For a moment, I could see the exhaustion there, a kind of worn-down sorrow that doesn't come from one bad moment, but from years of holding things too tightly inside. I went home, he continued, voice shaking in places he tried to steady. I remember thinking you'd call. Or that I would. Someone would break the silence before it grew teeth. He rubbed his thumb across his knuckles, slow and rhythmic, like he was trying to ground himself. But no call came, he said. So I tried to pretend I was fine. Told myself I made the right choice. That you'd be better off without the mess I was becoming. I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't have words, but because I knew he needed the quiet more than my questions. He drew in another breath, Deeper this time, like he needed courage with the oxygen. By the next morning, everything felt wrong, he said. The apartment was too quiet. My chest felt too tight. I couldn't breathe without thinking of everything I'd done wrong. His voice didn't tremble dramatically. It broke in soft, almost invisible places. I didn't want you to see how bad things were getting, he whispered. I thought disappearing would spare you. The word spare hit me with a strange heaviness, as if heartbreak had been a gift he thought he was offering me. Another car thundered overhead. The bridge beams hummed with the vibration. The world moved forward, uncaring, while we stayed frozen under the weight of old ghosts. You always said I shut down when things got too much, he said. I guess that night proved you right. His shoulders curled inward, the way people fold when they're trying to make themselves smaller. Less visible. Less disappointing. After a moment, he added, I didn't tell anyone what was happening. Not friends. Not family. I just slipped out of my own life. The wind rushed through the underpass, cool and sharp, carrying the scent of damp asphalt and something else, regret, maybe. The kind that lingers even after years have passed. I didn't know, I murmured. He let out a breath that sounded too close to a sob. I know you didn't. That's the worst part. He tilted his head back, staring at the dark span of sky visible between the overpass beams. His eyes shone faintly, catching the weak light. That night, he said, I walked for hours. Past the places we used to go. Past the building where I thought my life would make sense. I just kept walking until my legs gave out. His fingers tightened around each other. And when the sun came up, I still hadn't gone home. I listened to him quietly, feeling something in my chest twist and loosen all at once. Pieces of a story I never heard before began forming shapes I didn't know how to confront. I kept thinking, he whispered, if I go back, she'll see me like this.
Weak.
Falling apart. And I couldn't stand the thought. He glanced at me for a split second before looking away again, quick, almost frightened. I didn't want you to think less of me, he said. The night moved around us, soft and indifferent. A bus rumbled by in the distance. A stray dog barked somewhere far down the street. All of it felt muted under the weight of what he was finally letting out. But that wasn't the end of it, he said. His tone had shifted, quieter, darker, like he was approaching the part of the story he feared most. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers interlaced tightly. I lost myself after that, he said. I kept spiraling and
I didn't know how to stop.
The silence between us stretched long, careful, reverent. I watched him as he swallowed hard, his throat tightening around whatever truth he hadn't spoken yet. I didn't disappear to spare you, he said at last. Not really. He paused, the words trembling at the edge of something heavier. I disappeared because I was ashamed of who I was becoming. The light flickered again above us, casting his face in brief, trembling gold. And in that flicker I saw it, fear. Real, raw, unprotected fear. It wasn't just the breakup, he said softly. It wasn't just the job or the apartment or the friends who drifted away. His fingers began to shake. He tried to hide it. He failed. There's something else I haven't told you, he whispered. A chill ran through me. Not from the wind, but from the way his voice shifted. From the way he looked at me like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, deciding whether to fall or step back. I felt my breath catch. What is it? I asked. His eyes met mine, then slow, vulnerable, almost pleading. If I tell you, he said, I'm afraid you'll never look at me the same way again. And the night seemed to hold its breath with me, waiting for the truth neither of us was sure we were ready to hear. The night had settled into that deep, quiet blue that comes just before dawn, when the world feels thinner and every sound seems to travel farther. We were still sitting on the edge of the overpass, the concrete cold enough to seep through my clothes, but neither of us seemed willing to move. His breaths came uneven, like each one cost him something. And then, with a kind of exhausted surrender, he reached for the torn backpack at his side. The zipper rasped open, harsh against the soft hum of passing cars overhead.
He didn't look at me.
He kept his eyes on the frayed straps, as though what he was about to take out might burn him if he met my gaze. "I've carried this for a long time," he murmured. He slipped his hand inside and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. The edges were rounded now, worn smooth from too many days in a pocket, too many nights under his pillow, too many rainstorms, and too many regrets. Even before he handed it to me, I saw my name written across it. My breath caught. I knew that handwriting. I knew it the way you know a voice from childhood, or the smell of your grandmother's kitchen. He held the letter out, but his hand trembled, and for a second I thought he might pull it back.
He didn't.
"I never sent it," he whispered. "I couldn't." I took it slowly, like it might fall apart between my fingers. The paper was warm from being pressed against his body, but soft in a way that felt tired, like it had been waiting too long. The yellow streetlight overhead flickered once, washing the ink in a faint, gold tint. I unfolded it carefully, the creases giving way with a sigh, as though the letter had been holding its breath for years. His eyes stayed on the ground. The first line was written shaky, as if he'd been crying before the pen even touched the page. I read quietly, my voice barely more than a breath. "I'm sorry for breaking things I didn't know how to fix." A car passed, and its headlights swept across the concrete, lighting up his face for a brief moment. In that split-second wash of white, I saw him swallow hard. I kept reading. "I know I should tell you why. I know I owe you more than silence. But the truth is, I don't want you seeing how far I'm falling." My chest tightened, slow and painful. I remembered the night he left. How his absence felt too large for the room. How I had replayed every conversation, every laugh, every small argument, trying to find the moment things cracked without me noticing. The letter continued, ink smudged in two places like tears had soaked through. "You deserve someone stronger than I can pretend to be. Someone who doesn't drag shadows into your light." I paused, fingers gripping the paper a little too hard. He must have sensed it, because he whispered, "I was so scared. Of everything." The words on the page grew shakier near the end. "I don't know where I'm going from here. I don't know if I'll be okay. But I want you to be. So I'm stepping out of your life before I pull you down with me." And then the last line, the one that made the world tilt slightly, like the ground wasn't as steady as it had been moments ago. "Please don't come looking for me.
Goodbye. Goodbye."
A word that should have ended something, but only opened a wound instead. The paper trembled in my hands, but maybe it was me trembling. I didn't know when he finally started looking at me again, but by the time I lifted my eyes, he was watching with that mixture of dread and hope I had never seen on him before. "I thought if I disappeared," he said softly, "you'd be able to move on." His throat worked around a tight swallow. "I didn't want you wasting your life trying to save someone who didn't even know how to save himself." The wind moved through the underpass, brushing against us like a cold hand. It carried dust and the faint scent of wet cardboard from the corner, where he'd probably slept more nights than he wanted to tell me. "Why didn't you send it?" I asked, voice barely there. "Because," he said, "if I mailed it, it would have made everything real." He laughed once, quiet, broken. "And I wasn't brave enough for real." I looked back down at the letter. Lines written by a boy who once told me he loved me on a rooftop. Written by a man who had fallen farther than I realized. Words meant to close a door, even as he carried them like an open wound. "So you were saying goodbye," I said. He winced, a small, sharp thing that crossed his face like a shadow. "I didn't want to," he said, "but I thought it was better than making you watch me fall apart." The traffic above grew louder, a truck thundering past, the bridge shuddering under its weight. The sound filled the space between us, filling all the places as silence had once lived. "When I wrote that," he said slowly, "I thought I'd already lost everything." His hands opened and closed in his lap. "But when I saw you today, part of me hoped I hadn't." The confession hung there, soft and trembling. I folded the letter carefully, pressing along the old creases, though the paper resisted, like it hated the idea of being closed again after finally being opened. I held it in my palm, feeling the fragile weight of it. A car turned the corner nearby, headlights sweeping across us, stretching our shadows long against the concrete. When they passed, the world fell dim again. He stared at me, eyes wide and uncertain. "I'm not asking for anything," he whispered. "I just needed you to know I didn't walk away, because I stopped caring." A breath left me, slow and uneven. The night seemed to lean in, listening. "And the rest?" I asked. "What else were you afraid to tell me?" His lips parted. He hesitated. And for a moment, his features softened into something painfully young, a boy standing on the edge of a truth that could change everything. "That," he murmured, "is what I'm still trying to find the courage for." The wind grew colder, whispering through the cracks in the bridge. The letter lay warm against my palm, and the truth he hadn't yet spoken sat between us, waiting. The wind had settled into a low hum, brushing against the edge of the overpass, like it was trying to soothe something neither of us could name. Cars rushed by above us in a steady rhythm, their headlights cutting quick, white lines across the night. I could hear his breathing, thin, uneven, like the quiet before someone finally lets go of a truth they've carried too long. He sat with his hands folded tightly in his lap, knuckles pale, eyes fixed on the dark stretch of road below. For a long moment he didn't speak. He just stared, as if searching for the right words inside the shadows moving at our feet. Then he drew in a shaky breath. "I shouldn't have kept it from you," he whispered. He didn't look at me. I don't think he could. The night felt suddenly wider, like the world was waiting, listening. He swallowed, fingers twisting together. "It started before we broke up. The symptoms. The confusion. The days when I couldn't think straight." A cold ache slipped into my chest. I stayed still. Sometimes stillness is the only kindness you can offer someone who's breaking. "I went to the clinic alone," he said, voice thinning. "Sat there for 3 hours. Thought it was stress. Thought it was nothing." He laughed once, quiet, brittle. "It wasn't nothing." The word diagnosis hung between us like fog, heavy and impossible to ignore. He wrapped his arms around himself, shoulders curling inward. "I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell you. I didn't want to see your face when I said it out loud." The wind pushed against us again, colder now. I watched a loose piece of paper skid across the ground, spiraling until it disappeared into the night. He kept speaking, haltingly. I convinced myself it was some kind of punishment. For all the ways I'd hurt people before. For not being enough. For failing at everything I touched. His voice cracked on the word failing, and he looked away sharply, as if the memory itself burned. "I left the apartment because I didn't want you to watch it happen," he said. "I didn't want to be the reason your future dimmed." That last part hit harder than I expected. Not because of the words themselves, but because of how sincere they sounded. He continued, barely above a breath. "And when things got worse, the shelters, they were loud, crowded. I couldn't sleep.
Couldn't think.
I kept trying the treatments, but I always left before finishing. I didn't feel worth saving." My heart clenched. The boy I remembered, the one who used to laugh too loudly, who dreamed too boldly, who held the world in both hands like it could be shaped into something gentle, was now a man sitting under a bridge, believing he had deserved every bit of the pain he endured. He rubbed a hand over his face, dragging it down like he needed to wipe away years. "I told myself disappearing was protecting you. That if I pushed you away, you'd move on. Find someone better. Someone whole." His voice softened. "Someone healthy." A long silence followed, the kind that presses hard against the ribs. The truth floated there, quiet, devastating. I let the air settle before speaking. "You didn't protect me," I whispered, not accusing, just honest. "You broke both of us." He winced. Not anger, not defensiveness, just a quiet acceptance, like he'd replayed this exact moment in his head 1,000 times. He stared down at the pavement, tracing a crack with the toe of his shoe. "I know. I do. And I've lived with that every day." His hand shook again, just slightly. "Every time I got sick, I kept thinking, this is the price. This is what I get for hurting her." I felt something inside me tighten, coil, then slowly unravel. It wasn't rage. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something quieter, something shaped like grief for both of us. How many years, I murmured, did we lose because of one lie? He flinched. His eyes lifted toward me, filled with a kind of fragile hope and ancient regret. I thought if you knew, he said softly, you wouldn't look at me the same. The night grew quieter, like everything in it was holding still. I was wrong, he whispered. I let the silence stretch. Soft, heavy, necessary. The wind brushed the hair from his forehead, revealing how hollow his features had become, how deeply the years had carved themselves into him. He wasn't the boy I once loved, not entirely. But he wasn't a stranger either. He was something in between, a memory trying to become a person again. I wish you had trusted me, I said finally. His breath hitched. I wish I had, too. A siren wailed faintly in the distance, carried by the breeze. It echoed under the bridge, warping into something both haunting and familiar. He looked toward the sound, then back at me. There's more, he admitted, barely audible. I felt my stomach tighten. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped in front of him like he was praying without knowing it. I didn't just run from you, he said. I ran from everyone. From myself. From the fear that no one would ever stay once they knew. The headlights of a passing truck lit up his face, and for a moment he looked completely exposed. No mask, no excuses. Just truth. And now? I asked quietly. He breathed out slowly, the sound trembling. Now I'm tired of running. And I don't want the lie to be the last thing you remember about me. The air felt still again, fragile as glass. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know yet what I felt. But I knew this. The boy who left me had been broken. The man sitting beside me now was trying, barely desperately, not to be. Somewhere above us, another car passed, its lights sweeping over the concrete, stretching our shadows long and thin across the ground. When the darkness settled back in, he whispered, "Can you stay? Just for a little while." I didn't move. Not yet. Not away. Not closer. But the night around us felt different, as if the truth he finally spoke had cracked something open neither of us could ignore. And the next chapter, whatever it was, waited just beyond the silence. The highway hums above us like a tired lullaby, each passing car casting brief flashes of light across his face. He sits with his back against the cold concrete pillar, knees pulled close, the night wrapping around him like it's been waiting. I watch him from a few feet away, unsure if I should come closer or give him space he's already drowning in. When I finally ask the question, soft, careful, it barely leaves my lips. Why didn't you get help sooner? He doesn't answer at first. His eyes follow a pair of headlights sliding across the underside of the bridge, fading before they fully reach us. The silence settles deep, settling in his shoulders, in the hollow beneath his eyes. He exhales, long and shaky. I don't know, he murmurs. But the way he says it tells me he does. A breeze slips through, carrying the smell of wet asphalt and diesel. I fold my arms, more for something to hold than for warmth. He keeps staring at the ground, his jaw tightening the way it did when he used to hide from hard truths. You chose the streets, I say quietly. Over your friends. Over anything that could have helped you. My voice echoes faintly under the concrete. Why? This time, the question lands. It hits him like a weight he's been avoiding but never outrunning. He closes his eyes. Because I didn't think I deserved better. The words scrape out of him, low, thin, almost childlike. A confession shaped by years of cold nights and empty mornings. He pulls his sleeves over his hands as if trying to hide the tremor. When everything fell apart, he continues, I couldn't look at anyone who used to know me. I couldn't stand the thought of people seeing how far I'd fallen. I kept thinking, you wouldn't want to see me like that. No one would. He finally lifts his head, just enough for the next rush of headlights to paint the exhaustion across his features. His eyes glisten, not with tears, but with old, worn-out defeat. After losing you, he whispers, I thought that was it. That I'd already used up whatever place I had in this world. So the streets didn't feel like punishment. They felt fitting. The words settled deep in my chest, heavier than his silence ever was. I take a step closer, slowly, like approaching a frightened animal. So, you punished yourself? All these years? He shrugs a little, though it looks more like his shoulders collapsing inward. I thought disappearing made everything easier. For everyone. I swallow, feeling something sharp in my throat. Not for me. He flinches.
Just barely.
But enough. Traffic moves overhead in waves, each pair of headlights carving brief constellations across the concrete walls. They flicker, fade, return, like stars that can't decide whether to stay or disappear. He watches them too. I used to count them at night, he says. The lights from the bridge. I'd pretend they were stars that didn't care if I existed or not. It was easier than thinking about people. There's a tremble in his voice that wasn't there before, thin as thread, and just as fragile. I didn't ask for help because I didn't think I mattered enough to bother anyone, he adds. Didn't think losing me would change anything. I kneel down beside him, the concrete cold beneath my palms. Up close, the hollowness in his cheeks is more obvious, the years more visible. He avoids my gaze, as if he's afraid looking at me will break whatever thin tether is keeping him from disappearing again. How do you convince someone they matter? I ask softly, when they've already decided they don't. He swallows hard, eyes fixed on the darkness, just beyond the yellow glow of a distant street lamp.
You don't, he says. They have to decide it themselves.
And I never did.
For a moment, neither of us speaks.
The bridge hums above us, steady and indifferent. The world goes on, cars rushing, lights passing, people living lives he stopped believing he could have. When we broke up, he says quietly, I told myself you'd be better without me. That letting you go was some kind of kindness. He laughs, but it's hollow, like a cracked bell. But it wasn't kindness. It was fear. All of it. I study his profile, the sharp line of his nose, the tired droop of his shoulders. You could have talked to me. He closes his eyes again, as if bracing for a blow. I didn't want you to stay out of pity. I wouldn't have, I whisper. A gust of wind presses against us, lifting strands of hair from my face, tugging at the frayed edges of his jacket. He leans forward, elbows on his knees, fingers interlaced like he's afraid of what they'll do if he lets them loose. I didn't think I was worth saving, he says. So, I didn't give anyone the chance to try. The simplicity of the sentence makes it hurt more. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just truth stripped bare. I sit beside him fully now, our shoulders inches apart. He stiffens slightly, but doesn't move away. That, in a strange way, feels like progress. You're sitting here now, I say, talking to me. That means something, doesn't it? He hesitates. I don't know. You didn't ask me to stay tonight. I continue, but you didn't want me to leave either. The thought makes his breath hitch. He turns his head a little, just enough that I see the fragile uncertainty in his eyes. I'm scared, he admits. Of what? He opens his mouth, closes it again, tries once more. That if I tell you everything, you'll walk away. And this time I won't be able to survive it. The honesty knocks the wind from my lungs. A long, quiet moment settles between us, warmer than the air around us, gentler than the concrete beneath us. I'm still here, I say. I haven't walked away yet. His eyes flicker. Hope, disbelief, something trembling. Above us, another pair of headlights crosses the bridge, casting a brief glow over both of us. In that second, his expression softens, barely, but enough to see the boy he used to be. For the first time all night, he doesn't look away. The wind shifts, carrying the faint scent of rain, and I realize the night feels different now. Still heavy, still wounded, but no longer hopeless. Maybe this is how healing begins. Not with certainty. Not with promises. But with two people sitting beneath a bridge, learning how to speak the truth out loud, one fragile sentence at a time. The night has quieted around us, settling into that strange hour when even the wind seems to hesitate. He sits beside me under the bridge, shoulders curled inward, as if the world has been pressing on them for too many years. His breathing is uneven, the kind that comes from carrying a truth too long. I wait, letting the silence be soft enough for him to step into it. He finally speaks, voice thin. "There's something I haven't told you." The way he says it, small, like he's bracing for impact, pulls at something deep in my chest. The traffic above us hums like a heartbeat, steady and distant. "I need you to hear this," he adds. I nod. I don't trust myself to answer out loud. He swallows hard, hands twisting together in his lap. "The night before I ended up on the streets, I try to find you." The words fall between us like something fragile, barely holding shape. I stare at him, trying to understand, trying to imagine the version of him who stood outside my world without stepping into it. He keeps going haltingly. "I came to your building.
Late.
I didn't even know if you still lived there, but I had to try. I thought maybe you could help. Or at least tell me what to do." A car rushes by above, the headlights flickering across our small corner of concrete. For a second, the glow hits his face, catching the lines in his forehead, the rawness in his eyes. He looks young and old all at once. "I stood there for almost an hour," he says. "On the sidewalk. Just standing." I breathe out slowly. "Why didn't you knock?" He lets out a sound, a laugh pushed through a wound. I kept rehearsing what to say, over and over. I sounded pathetic every time. "I didn't want you to see me like that." My chest tightens. I picture him there, shoulders hunched, hands in his pockets, staring at my window with hope clawing against fear. What happened next? I ask, though part of me already feels the answer approaching like a cold wave. He rubs his palms together, trying to warm them, though the night isn't cold enough for that. "Your lights were on. I could see the shadows on the curtains, people moving around. You were laughing." I freeze. "I heard you," he continues quietly. "Your laugh. I hadn't heard it in so long. And for a second I thought, maybe I should still go up. Maybe you'd understand." Another pair of headlights sweeps through, flickering across the pillar behind us. "But then I saw someone else inside," he says softly. "A silhouette. Not close, but close enough." I close my eyes for a moment. I remember that night. Friends had come over. Someone told an old joke I'd heard 100 times. I laughed without knowing he was standing under my window, heart splintering. "I thought you'd moved on," he whispers. "Thought you were happy. Happier without me. And I couldn't be the one to step in and ruin that." Anger stirs in me, not sharp but aching. Anger at circumstance, at timing, at the ways life twists two people away from each other just when they need each other most. "You should have come inside," I say, my voice barely above a breath. "You should have knocked." He shakes his head. I couldn't. I looked at myself, what I had left, who I'd become, and I knew I didn't belong in your life anymore. He pauses, and something inside him trembles. So I walked away. He says it like he's confessing a sin he never forgave himself for. And maybe he hasn't. Maybe he's spent every day since carrying that hour like a bruise he couldn't touch and couldn't heal. I look at him, really look. The tired posture, the too-thin frame, the shadows beneath his eyes. And under it all, the same softness he had when we were young, the softness he always tried to hide. "You didn't have to face the world alone," I say, the words escaping before I can decide if they're fair. He lets out a breath that sounds like a break. "Didn't I?" he whispers. The highway above us drones on indifferent. A gust of wind gathers grit and carries it down the slope. He tucks his chin to his chest. "I thought knocking on your door would ruin your life," he murmurs. "I didn't want to pull you into my disaster. I didn't think I had the right to ask anything from you. Not after the way things ended." Something sharp stings behind my eyes. "You had every right to ask," I say. "You didn't give me the chance." He looks away, jaw tightening. "I told myself you were better without me. That walking away was the kindest thing I could do." "And was it?" I ask softly. His breath catches. "No." We sit there a long time, the night stretching wide around us. A train horn echoes somewhere far off, low and lonely. He presses his palms to his eyes like the memories are too bright, too loud. "I didn't know how to come back," he admits. "Didn't know how to face you after letting everything fall apart." "You think disappearing was easier?"
I ask. For you, he says.
For me? I repeat. You think losing you made anything easier? He flinches, and the truth hits him like a wave he didn't brace for. I thought I was doing the right thing, he whispers. You weren't. He nods slowly, absorbing it like someone finally letting themselves feel the burn of an old wound. I see that now. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's thick with years of missed words and unspoken fear. The headlights above us flicker again, bathing us both in a brief, pale light before disappearing. He looks at me, then really looks, and something in his expression shifts. A flicker of hope, maybe, or regret wearing a new face. I didn't know how much you cared, he says. I didn't know how much you were hurting, I answer. His shoulders tremble once. Just once. I'm sorry, he murmurs, for everything I let collapse. I reach out, not to fix him, not to save him, but to let him know he isn't invisible. My hand brushes his sleeve, and he exhales like someone finally allowed to breathe. The night doesn't feel so sharp anymore. The silence doesn't feel like a wall. It feels like a door cracked open, waiting. He whispers, barely audible. I wish I hadn't walked away. I swallow. You're here now. He nods, the smallest, quietest motion. And for the first time tonight, his face softens, not with relief, not with certainty, but with possibility. The sound of a distant car fades. The world grows still. Maybe this is where the next chapter begins. Not with forgiveness. Not with answers. Just with two people sitting under a bridge, neither walking away this time. As he finishes speaking, the silence between us grows heavy. I look at the bruises life has placed on him, the pieces time has worn down, and I wonder how many of them I didn't notice when it mattered. Part of me wants to walk away, to protect the version of my life that doesn't hurt. Another part wants to reach for his hand. Can I forgive someone who never believed he deserved saving? I stand before I'm ready to, brushing the dust from my palms as if that alone could steady me. The air under the bridge feels colder now, like it's waiting to see what I'll choose. He looks up at me, confused, almost afraid to misread the moment. For a second, he doesn't move. His breath fogs the air between us, fading as quickly as it appears. Come on, I whisper. He hesitates, just long enough to break my heart all over again, then rises slowly to his feet. His knees crack softly. He sways a little, as if standing upright is something he hasn't done in a while. There's a flicker of surprise in his eyes, like he didn't expect me to ask anything of him ever again. We start walking toward the mouth of the underpass. The concrete walls carry our footsteps back to us, making it sound like someone else is walking beside us, some memory, some ghost of who we used to be. The shadows stretch long across the ground, folding over his shoes like dark water. He keeps his hands tucked into his sleeves. Not from the cold, I think, but from habit. Years of trying to make himself smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. I match his pace anyway. Above us, cars rush by, their headlights slicing through the gaps in the bridge. The beams sweep across his face now and then, revealing pieces of him in flashes, the hollow cheeks, the stubble, the weariness sitting where hope used to be. And yet, when he notices me looking, he straightens a little, as though trying to look like the boy I once loved. He doesn't realize I'm not searching for that boy. I'm just trying to understand the man beside me. Halfway through the tunnel, I stop. He turns back, worried he's done something wrong. You don't have to sleep here tonight, I tell him softly. The sentence hangs there, suspended between us. Something inside him shudders, barely visible, but I feel it like an earthquake beneath quiet soil. He inhales slowly, eyes widening just slightly. Gratitude flickers there, but so does disbelief, and something sharper, fear, maybe. The fear of hope. The fear of accepting something he thinks he shouldn't have. Why, he asks, voice nearly breaking. Why are you doing this? I could list the reasons. I could say it's because no one deserves to sleep on concrete. Because I can't pretend I never knew him. Because walking away from someone who once held your heart feels like trying to outrun your own shadow. But instead, I just say, because you're not alone. Not tonight. He presses his lips together. Not a smile, he hasn't remembered how to do that yet. More like he's holding something back, something too fragile to release in the open. The wind slips through the underpass, carrying the faint smell of rain, metal, and old cigarettes. A puddle glistens beneath a broken street lamp. He steps around it carefully, as if not wanting to disturb the reflection of the light trapped there. I notice the way he keeps glancing at me, quick and uncertain, like he's afraid I'll vanish if he looks too long. I wonder how many nights he's looked at empty space beside him and wished it was different. We reach the end of the underpass, where the city lights begin again, yellow windows stacked like tired stars, laundromat signs buzzing, a bus groaning its way down the street. The world continues indifferent. But here, with him, everything feels paused, tender, breakable. He stops walking and turns toward me fully for the first time since we stood together. In the glow of the streetlight, he looks like a man stitched together by memories and mistakes. And something else, hope so small it barely has a shape yet. "You don't have to do this," he says. "I know." He swallows. "I don't want to be your burden." "You're not," I answer, though the truth is more complicated. He's not a burden, but he is weight, the kind that presses on old wounds, the kind that asks to be carried gently. "I don't want to ruin your life again," he whispers. "You won't," I say. "I'm choosing this. I'm choosing right now." He blinks, and for a moment his eyes shine. He looks away quickly, letting the moment settle into the cracks of the night. The traffic hums above us, steady, like a heartbeat far too big for either of us. A small gust blows his hair across his forehead. He pushes it back with hands that tremble, and I realize how long he must have gone without someone reaching for him, without warmth, without anything soft. I take a breath. "We'll just get you somewhere safe," I say. "One night. That's all I'm promising. Just one night off the concrete." He nods slowly, like the idea itself is a fragile creature he doesn't want to scare away. His voice drops low. "That's more than I've had in a long time." Silence forms again, but this time it feels different. Not heavy, not accusing, just waiting like a door half open, the hinges willing to move if someone decides to push. We start walking again, side by side. He keeps glancing at the street, the sky, the windows glowing with other people's lives, like he's studying a world he forgot how to belong to. The city feels larger around him, almost too large for one person to face. But he's not facing it alone tonight. At the crosswalk he pauses. His shoulders tremble again, a soft, nearly invisible shake, like a breath caught the wrong way. When he looks at me, there's something new in his eyes. Something like the first warm day after a long winter, when the snow doesn't melt but loosens just enough to remember how to move. "Are you sure?" he asks. I nod. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't." The walk signal buzzes on and the light changes. Cars slow. The world makes space. He steps forward, and I walk with him, not toward the past we broke, but toward something else entirely. Maybe an old door opening. Maybe a new one being built. Maybe both. As we cross under the glow of the street lamps, his shadow falls beside mine, long and uncertain, but not alone. He stops just outside my door, one foot on the welcome mat, one still in the hallway. His shoulders lift on a small breath, like he's trying to steady himself before crossing into a world he's not sure he's allowed to enter. The light from inside spills across him, soft and warm, turning the edges of his face into something almost familiar. For a moment, he isn't the man I found trembling under concrete and cold air. For a moment, he looks like the boy I used to know. The one who laughed too loudly and loved too fiercely, and never imagined life could unravel the way it did. "It's only for one night," I tell him gently. I don't know why I say it like that. Maybe to protect myself. Maybe to protect him. Maybe because naming anything more feels too dangerous right now. But something flickers in his eyes anyway. A quiet kind of hope, thin as thread, sitting there between us like a secret neither of us is brave enough to claim. He steps inside. The door shuts behind him with a soft click, and suddenly the world is smaller, warmer, quieter. The living room hums with lamplight, the kind that fills corners instead of chasing shadows away. He stands there with his backpack still slung over one shoulder, fingers curled tight around the strap. I see the tremble there, faint but steady. Not fear. Not exactly. More like someone waiting for permission to breathe. He scans the room slowly. The couch with its worn throw blanket. The stack of books by the window. The framed photo leaning against the wall I still haven't hung. Nothing extraordinary, nothing special. Just my life, simple, steady, untouched by the storms that swallowed him whole. He looks at it the way someone looks at a place they used to dream about. You can sit, I say a little too softly. He nods. But he doesn't move right away. His eyes linger on the lamplight, the one next to the couch, the warm amber one he bought with me years ago, when we still believed love meant forever. It still works, still glows the same gentle color he once said reminded him of early morning sun. He walks toward the couch like he's approaching something fragile. When he sits, the cushions dip under his weight, the fabric adjusting around him, like the room recognizes him in a way I'm not sure I'm ready to. For a moment, he just sits there with his hands folded in his lap, shoulders hunched, head bowed. The quiet fills the space between us, stretching thin, almost humming with everything we aren't saying. I take the chair across from him, but I don't lean back. Not yet. I sit at the edge, elbows on my knees, like I'm afraid if I relax, I'll lose my balance in all of this. He exhales once, shaky, uneven. It's been a long time, he says. His voice is softer than I remember. Worn down. Like the world sanded the edges off until only the bare truth was left. I nod.
Yeah, it has.
Silence again. A different kind this time. Less sharp. More uncertain. He glances around the room once more, eyes lingering on tiny pieces of the life I built without him. A life he walked away from but never quite left behind. You kept that lamp, he murmurs. I don't answer right away. The truth sits heavy on my tongue. I didn't have a reason to get rid of it, I whisper.
He smiles, or tries to.
The attempt doesn't reach his eyes.
Not yet.
He tugs at a loose thread on his sleeve. His shoulders curl a little tighter, like he's bracing for something he hasn't decided how to say. I don't know how to do this, he admits. Do what? I ask.
This.
He gestures vaguely between us. Being here. Being seen. Being welcomed. I swallow. The sound feels loud in the quiet room. I didn't want you out there tonight. He closes his eyes, just for a moment, as if the words land somewhere deeper than I intended. When he opens them again, the lamplight catches the bruise by his cheekbone, the one fading into yellow and blue. I try not to stare, but he notices anyway. He always did. It's not as bad as it looks, he says. It looks like life has been doing more hitting than helping, I answer. He gives me a small, bitter laugh.
Yeah.
Something like that. Neither of us moves. The room settles around us, warm and still, the hum of the radiator, the distant sound of a car passing outside, the soft flicker of the lamp. All of it feels too gentle for the story he's carrying in his bones. Why did you come with me? He asks quietly. You didn't have to. No, I say. But I couldn't leave you there. He looks at his hands, at the dirt under his nails, the cuts, the shaking. No one said that to me in a long time. The admission is barely a breath. More truth than he meant to give. I lean back slightly, letting the chair take my weight. Not relaxing exactly, just allowing myself to settle into the moment with him. I don't know what this is, I tell him honestly. I don't know where it leads. But you don't have to be alone tonight. His throat works as he swallows.
Hard.
He nods, eyes shining with something raw and unguarded. I don't deserve this, he whispers. I don't think that's for you to decide, I answer softly. The words hang there between us, fragile but steady, like a first step on thin ice. He rubs his palms together, then looks up, really looks at me. And for the first time tonight, I see something I've been trying not to recognize. Hope. Small, trembling, but unmistakably alive. The kind of hope people don't dare speak aloud. The room feels warmer suddenly. Or maybe it's just the way he's sitting now, less curled in on himself, more like someone trying to relearn what safety feels like. I exhale quietly. Maybe we both needed this. Not an answer. Not a miracle. Just this moment. This quiet place between what we were and whatever comes next. A soft beginning. Or a soft breaking. I'm not sure which. He looks around once more, then at me. Do you really think healing starts like this? He asks. I look at him. The bruises, the tired eyes, the boy I lost and the man he became. I think healing starts, I whisper, when someone finally stops walking away. He holds my gaze, and for the first time in years, neither of us looks down. Outside, a car passes. The headlights sweep across the room like a slow-moving comet, lighting his face for just a second.